This is a tutorial on making masks with an optional filter pocket. It is time to make more things. While I was working on my how to batch sew scrub caps video, the word went out. When you're going to be around other people, at your job, going to the grocery store, the liquor store, the pet store, the post office, or just taking public transit, still keep up with the social distancing, but also wear a mask. Wearing a mask is better than not wearing a mask. Medical workers have no choice but to get up in people's faces, whether they are swabbing the general public for mass testing or dealing with very sick people. They need the most protective gear, the factory-made stuff, the N95 stuff. And remember, it's not just COVID-19 they're dealing with. All the other infectious things that are usually there are still out there doing their thing alongside our newest infectious disease superstar. So us, the general public out there, we should get going on properly using pretty good masks. As you can see, 100% cotton or quilting type fabric, tea towels, pillowcases, clean sheets, and even t-shirts are better than nothing. And actually, they're pretty good. Also, keep taking social distancing extremely seriously. This helps health workers by reducing the number of people showing up at the ER and clinic doors, and keeps the workers at all those essential jobs, post office, grocery workers, delivery drivers, food wholesalers, farmers, field workers, garbage collectors, housekeeping, truck drivers, light and power workers, and so on the job and also not sick. Oh, and check the description for links on how to use masks and gloves in ways that keep you and everyone else safe. Okay, enough chatter. Let's get to the making. You'll need tightly woven non-stretch fabric. 100% cotton is best for comfort and washability. 2 colors is nice to remind you of the outside and the inside, but not necessary. You also need scissors, pins, 1/2-inch wide bias tape, or a fabric tube you make of the same width. Some sort of bendy wire, I'll get into that more, but I've got some 22 gauge solid, not stranded, wire from my learning to play with Arduino stockpile, wire clippers, and optionally one of those reusable shopping bags made out of that printed recycled plastic fabric. At this point, most of us have a few of those lying around. Cut your reusable shopping bag apart into its flat panels. If you have been using them, probably don't use the bottoms. They probably have been worn through in a few places and likely have holes. This is no good. The reason these are useful is they are water resistant and printed, not woven fabric. The holes in them are smaller than in typical woven fabric. Certainly, they aren't as nifty as the N95 stuff, but they are another barrier against vapor droplets. If you aren't sure you have the right kind of bag, after you wash it, put it up against your nose and mouth and see if you can breathe through it. If you can, it's the stuff you're looking for. Anyway, wash the bags and your cotton fabric and dry at high heat. This means your filter pieces will eventually break down. They don't love this treatment, but they will be replaceable and will work for a while. Ideally, you'll need thin 1/4-inch elastic, but if you're like me and are all out of that, ribbon or even homemade bias tape will hold this mask to your head. Clean shoelaces or anything similar will also work. Here's a link for making bias tape, and you can find it in the description. For the mask, you will need a pattern. For most people, a 9.5-inch by 6.5-inch rectangle works just fine. But if you're making the mask for little kids, use the inside rectangle at 7.5 inches by 5 inches. In general, if you need a mask other than average size, use that person's hand as a measure. Use 1 hand span width, pinky to thumb, plus the width of 4 more fingers. I'm pretty average size hand and face wise, so you can see my hand with 5 fingers and then plus 4 fingers equals pretty much the size of the pattern. Generally, a person's hand covers their mouth and nose, and then the extra 4 fingers gives you the seam allowances and chin coverage you need to make the whole pattern work. For each mask, you'll need to cut out 2 rectangles. You'll also need 4 lengths of ribbon or bias tape that are 8 inches long. If you're lucky enough to have elastic, 2 5-inch pieces will work great. If you want to tie this mask, for 18-inch long ties of some sort, whether they're cloth strips or clean shoelaces or whatever you have works well too. Finally, you'll need a 4-inch piece of 1/2-inch wide bias tape, or just make a fabric tube. If you're using bias tape or cloth strips, you'll need to finish one end of the 8-inch pieces so they don't fray when you wash them. I do this whole triangle foldy anything where I open the end of the tape, push in a corner, close it up and sew it, but you can just fold it over a couple of times to hide the raw edges and sew it that way too. You'll also need an approximately 3.5-inch piece of wire. Like I said, I happen to have this 22 gauge solid wire. 20 gauge works fine too, but floral wire, gardening wire for holding up plants, pipe cleaners, these all work. I've also heard of people using that wire bit on the top of hanging files. Be creative, use what you've got. Some of these items won't do so well in the wash, so leaving that wire pocket open allows you to remove and replace the wire bit easily. Whatever you do, do not use scissors to cut your wire. This will visibly dent your scissors and you're in trouble. So use wire snips. I have these cute ones from when I fiddle around with making jewelry, but lots of pliers have a little wire snipper thing on their inside edges. Also use pliers, or if you're like me and have this cute little jewelry tool, bend or curl over the edges that you just cut because they're sharp. This makes it safer for everyone and it won't poke through the wire pocket when you're putting it in. On to the sewing. Create a rolled hem on one long edge of each of your rectangles. You can pin it in place and sew, or do it freehand. You don't want to take up more than 1/2 inch of fabric when you do this, unless if you can possibly manage. Once you have the 2 rolled hems, lay one piece of fabric down right side up, place the ties or the elastic. If you're going with longer ties, bunch them up and pin them to the bottom fabric so you don't accidentally sew them into a seam. Then place the second piece of fabric right side down so the rolled hem is facing up. Pin the ties or elastic in place at the corners. From the midpoint of the rolled hem, go about 3 fingers over from that and start your seam around the edge of your rectangle. If you're worried about sewing the hole closed accidentally, you can put a pin in to mark the spot about 3 fingers over the other way from the center to remind you to stop. Sew around your rectangle about 1/4 inch from the edge. Reach inside the hole and flip the mask right sides out and use the ties to gently turn out the corners. Take that short 4-inch piece of bias tape. On the long side of your mask, away from the hole, sew 3 sides of that bias tape across the center of your mask. This is the wire pocket. You want this right up at the very tip top of your mask, and the stitches should be as close to the edge of the bias tape as you can get them. Remember to leave that one end open. Now for the pleating. The edge with the bias tape tube is the top. You're going to want to make 3 pleats, so do them so they are facing down from the top of the mask. You don't want to make little cups that catch stuff. You can measure them out, but in this case it's fine to just eyeball thirds. After you make 1 or 2 of these masks, you'll get pretty quick at it. And after making 10 or so, you may not even have to pin down the pleats. Anyway, pin down the pleats on one side, then pick up the pleats on the other side. Pull to see that it's pretty straight. Pin it down and repeat for the other 2 pleats. Would I do it this way on a skirt or something big? Nope. But speed and ease are the key here, not keeping my spot on Project Runway. Sew the pleats down and tack at the top, remove the pins as you go, tack at the bottom, and repeat on the other side. Feed your wire into the nose piece or that little fabric pocket you sewed on there. This is how you tie the ear loops. Tie one piece around its twin on the other side and then tie the twin back to the original. And then you can slide them over each other to adjust the ear loops. Like I said, if you have elastic, you're all done. If you want to do an optional filter, cut your panels of your cut up reusable shopping bags into pieces that fit over your face and inside the filter pocket. Ta-da! You now have a mask with a replaceable filter. And the mutual fuzziness of the fabrics will keep that fabric filter in place. It won't fall out the bottom. If you want to customize your mask a little bit, you can make it fit a little tighter. So grab a little piece of the mask under your chin where it tightens up. Mark or pin that place where you were pinching it to make it fit better, and you sew these little triangles at the bottom edge of your mask. If you're feeling tidier, you can actually sew the triangles inside. Good luck, stay safe. Check out my videos for hints on batch sewing these masks, making bias tape, and you can also check out my how to make scrub caps for making hair coverings. Again, I'll be posting a video soon on how to safely use masks and gloves. Remember, these are barriers, not force fields. Anything that you touch with your gloves and when you wear your mask, they're picking up germs. Learn how to not spread those germs and how to remove your masks and gloves safely. Thank you.